Next, we're going to head to the backyard and look at the wood deck building feature. We're going to create a low-profile wood deck that will be adjacent to the pool. The client wants a pool deck for some chaise lounge chairs, and we'll do a low-profile wood deck starting at the bottom right-hand corner of the right patio. So zoom into the right patio. Make sure that nothing is selected. So if you just left-click away from all of the shapes, you'll ensure that nothing is selected. We'll go over to our Hardscapes and Decks tab and click on Wood Deck. The next shape that we draw will be a wood deck. The wood deck platform is going to be 15 feet by 15 feet. So we'll use the rectangle tool. Activate your rectangle tool from the toolbar. Because this is a square, we'll hold the Shift key down before activating the rectangle tool. So Shift key held down, left click on the bottom right-hand corner of the extended walkway. Come down diagonally until you're at 15 by 15 and left click to complete your shape. Now look over at your Hardscapes and Decks tab. Underneath Wood Deck, you'll see the height that the wood deck defaulted to. We're going to set that to 0 feet, 6 inches. Below the height, you'll see the interactive picture of the wood deck. If you put your cursor over the different parts of the wood deck, you'll see the label. So you'll see that you have your fascia and skirt, your posts, miters and dividers, surface boards, and framing. Left-click on the surface boards. Below the surface boards, you can see the settings to turn the surface boards on or off, customize the boards on the top of the surface. You can increase or decrease the width, set them at an angle, or create a gap. Let's go into 3D. If you leave your shape selected in 3D, we can work with it in, if you leave your shape selected in 2D, we can work with it in 3D. So we'll go up and click on the 3D toggle. If you press the letter B, you can zoom into that shape really quickly. Looks great. If I want to deselect that, I can go up and click on the circle with the line through it and make any changes that I need to in the panel menu. Next shape that we're going to draw is going to be another hardscape. We're going to have an additional slope in this property going up the back wall. And so we've got two slopes, one in the front going down to the street, one in the back going up the back wall. We want to create a retaining wall where the slope is. We'll create our retaining wall as a hardscape. Let's go back into 2D and get set up to draw that hardscape. Make sure that your wood deck is deselected. Go to your Hardscapes and Decks tab, click on Hardscape, and that will prepare us for the next shape. Set us up for a hardscape retaining wall. Now, one of the things that we talked about at the beginning of class when we were looking at our snaps and constraints was a setting called a smart setting. We're going to go up to the top of our grid in the application bar and open up our snaps. We're going to leave our snap set correctly or the same and angle snap set the same, but I'm going to go down to smart setting and turn that on. When you have your smart setting turned on, your drawing tools and your shapes that you're moving will have a measurement display showing you how far you are away from adjacent shapes. So for example, if I'm going to draw my retaining wall from the bottom right-hand corner of the wood deck, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in really close here. I'm going to activate my line tool. I'm going to put my cursor right on that corner, and I'm going to come to the right. You'll see a measurement showing me how far I am away from that corner. I'm not drawing, I'm just moving my cursor. That helps me know where I am, how far I am, and really will be a helpful tool for you all. Move your cursor to the right, and if you keep it nice and steady, you can see when you get to the edge of the wall that you're 20 feet and 7 inches away from that corner. And I'm adjacent to the wall. I'm going to left click to activate my line tool and draw to the left 93 feet and 2 inches. Now I'm going to show you guys how to type this in. If you want to type in the length of the line segment with feet and inches, type in 93. You can look at your cursor and see the 93 value. Press the space bar. That's going to move you over to the inches. Now we'll type in 2 and we'll have our length, 93 feet 2 inches. If we press enter, we'll have the line segment with the length that we typed in. And it's going all the way across to the left wall. And that's what we want. Next, I'm going to use the outline tool to create the other side of the shape. Go over to your toolbar and activate your outline tool. Zoom into either one of those yellow squares. We'll left click and offset down 1 foot. Left click on the yellow squares. When you see the offset function, we want to come down 1 foot. Left click. That completes our retaining wall, but we still have to set the height. We'll go over to our Hardscapes tab and set the height of this shape to 2 feet 6 inches. Let's take a look at that in 3D. We'll have our wood deck and a retaining wall in place. If you want to deselect that, click on the circle with the line through it. All right, now we're going to go back into 2D. Next, we're going to work on our slopes, and we've got plenty of site references in place for that. We're going to head back to Stage 4 Terrain. So if you go up to the top of your panel menu, you can either left-click on the back button, or you can left-click on the title and go down to Stage 4 Terrain, left-click. When you're in the Terrain stage, you can look at your Terrain tab and see 2 options for applying a slope. It depends on the property. If the property has multiple directions of slopes, you'll choose multiple. If your slopes are going in a single direction, you'll choose single. We're going to choose single. Left-click on single, and you'll see a split screen. The top half of your screen is your grid and your project. Also, if you zoom out, you'll see a vertical dashed line. It's a white line going right down the middle of your grid. That's called the slope direction line. It indicates the direction the slope is going. You can rotate that slope direction line and it can go in other directions, but it can't bend and go in multiple directions. It's actually in the right orientation for our slope. We're going to have a slope that goes down and away from the front of the house and up the back wall of the house. So those are going in the same direction. You'll notice a little plus sign on your cursor. That's the tool that you need for plotting points where the elevation changes take place. You don't need to go over and activate any tools. You've got the tool that you need. Down at the bottom, you'll see a profile of your current slope. We don't have one, so it's a straight line. Everything is 0 right now. But as we begin to plot slope points up in the top screen, we'll see a profile of our slope start to develop down in the bottom screen. Let's go ahead and start plotting those points. I'm going to have you zoom in to the top of the property, or the front yard area. Point number 1 is going to be at the end of the driveway. we left-click on the slope direction line where the end of the driveway lines up with the slope direction line. You'll see a 0 foot value applied automatically. Because everything's at 0 there, the value defaults to 0. If you look over in your panel menu, you'll see slope line settings, and the first thing you'll see is point height. We're going to set the point height to -4 feet here. When you're working with a slope, you have to have at least 2 points. Where does the slope start? Where does it stop? Does it slope up? Does it slope down? Ours is sloping down from 0, so we need to establish that the house is at 0. We're going to go to the longest wall of the house. That's on the right side. And where that lines up with the slope direction line, I'm going to left-click. If you need to move it or adjust the position, you can left-click and drag it. Now that I have it in the right position, lined up with the furthest wall of the house, I'm going to go to the panel menu and set the value to 0 feet, 0 inches. Look for your point height value box, and let's set that to 0 feet, 0 inches. Now we have a slope going down and away from the front of the house. Also notice that slope profile indicates the slope going down and away on that side of the property. You can zoom and pan both of these top and bottom windows if you need to. We're going to plot the slope in the backyard next. I'm going to zoom into the retaining wall and left-click where the slope direction line intersects with the retaining wall. I want to set that value to 0 feet, 0 inches. Now I'm going to plot a point where the slope direction line intersects with the back wall. And I'll set that to a positive value so we slope up 4 feet. Go to your point height value box. Change the value to 4 feet, 0 inches. Now we're going to kind of zoom out and pan so that we can see the entire property elevations. We want to look at the profile down in the bottom. Everything looks great. We've got our slope going down the front of the house, up the back of the house. Down at the bottom, you can see the distance between the points. But if you look at the line in between the two zeros, it's not exactly straight. It's a little uneven. That indicates that the terrain might be just a little uneven there too. We can tighten that terrain and make it perfectly level in our panel menu. In your slope line settings below point height and contour interval, you'll see terrain detail. That slider says smooth on one side and tight on the other. Think of smooth as natural and tight as level. Below that, you have a button that says Affect All Points. If we want everything to be tight and level in between our points, we can turn that on. Watch the change as we move our slider from smooth to tight in order to make that terrain very level. Left-click and drag the slider over to tight. Notice that everything's really flat and even there. That'll be helpful because we're going to set our pool to 0, and we want the terrain adjacent to our pool to be 0. Also think of the hardscapes that we draw that we set to 0. We want everything to be really nice and level adjacent to those shapes. Let's take a look at that in 3D. We've got our slope going up the back wall and on the front yard. We have the driveway following the slope of the terrain. The walkway does not follow the slope of the terrain. Notice that as the terrain pulls down and away from that walkway and from the handrails and the stairs, all of those hardscapes are exposed. Hardscapes will always generate from the ground up. Hardscapes cannot be elevated. You'll never see space underneath hardscapes. They always generate from the ground up. You're probably noticing the circle that's attached to your cursor. That's a part of another set of tools that we learn in the 3D environment. We call those our 3D terrain tools. We can push and pull the terrain and change the look of the terrain with these tools. The circle that you see is the brush. And if you move the brush around the property, the system will measure the elevation. It's a great way to check your work. So for example, if I navigate to the backyard again, if I want to ensure that everything is really flat and level and at 0, I can move that cursor and I see everything's at 0 in the backyard. But as soon as I put my cursor on the slope, it's measuring an elevation there. That's a great way to check your work. Let's go back into 2D. Next, we're going to create a planter in the area between the retaining wall and the back wall. We'll go to Stage 8, Planters for that. Go to the top of the panel menu, left-click on the stage name, go down to Stage 8 Planters and left-click. That's going to take us to the planter stage. This is a very simple stage. We're drawing on the terrain a shape where we want a planter bed. Planter shapes create a different material on the terrain. And when you go into the material stage, you can select that surface independently and apply dirt or mulch or rock or whatever material you want to go into your planter. So we're just drawing on the terrain where we want a different material. Zoom in to the area where you have the retaining wall and the back wall. We're going to create a planter that covers a new material, a dirt or a mulch, in between those walls, in between the retaining wall, the back wall, and the side wall. So basically we're going to have dirt in between the entire area. We'll use the rectangle tool to create that area. Activate your rectangle tool. Go to the bottom left-hand corner of the retaining wall. You may have to zoom in a little bit. Now we're going to bring that rectangle down to the back wall. That should be 16 feet 17 inches. Or I'm sorry, 16 feet and 7 inches. Then we're going to stretch that over to the right. And you can just kind of zoom out or pan. Keep going to the right until you snap on to the wall on the right side. That should be 93 feet and 2 inches long. Once you get those dimensions squared away, you can left-click to complete your planter shape. Now look in your panel menu under the Planters tab. Not very many settings here. The height of the planter is going to default to -1 inch. That means that it's cutting down to the surface of that grass, 1 inch. We're going to set that to 2 feet because we have an elevation. We want the planter to come up and meet the top of the retaining wall. We'll set the height of our planter to a positive 2 feet and 0 inches. Planters can be set to follow the terrain. We'll turn that setting on so the planter will follow the slope. Let's take a look at that in 3D. You should see a different material where the planter was drawn. Just remember, you can go into materials and apply any dirt or earth material that you like for your planter beds. There is an option to add a curb. It wouldn't apply here, but that is a nice option if you have a planter and you want to create a curb. Automatically puts a curb on your planter and you can stretch it to whatever length you want. That's the option that you see in the planter's settings where you see Insert Curb. Any planter can have a curb applied. We're finished with planters. Let's go back into 2D. Our next objective is to go to Custom Shapes and Pergolas and work with custom shapes. That's going to be in stage 9. If you go up to the top of your panel menu and left click on the next stage button, we'll be in stage 9, custom shapes and pergolas. When you're working with stage 9, you can go down to your custom shape and pergola tab, and you can choose shape or pergola. We want to draw custom shapes first, so we'll click on shape. Custom shapes have unique properties that other shapes do not have. Custom shapes can be elevated, they can be rotated in 3 different directions, and one side of a custom shape can be set higher to the other side. That's unique to custom shapes. The first example that we're going to look at is a ramp. A ramp is lower on one side than the other side, and this client would like ramp access from the new deck, the new patio, up to the wood deck, because the wood deck is at a 6-inch height. So we'll create a ramp adjacent to the walkway. If you zoom into the top left-hand corner of the wood deck, that's going to be our site reference. We'll draw the ramp adjacent to the extended walkway. We've already set our shape to a custom shape, so we're ready to begin drawing. We'll use the rectangle tool and create a 5-foot by 4-foot shape starting at the top left-hand corner of the wood deck. Activate your rectangle tool. Left-click on the top left-hand corner of the wood deck, come up 5 feet, and over to the right 4 feet. Left-click to complete your shape. Look over at your custom shape and pergola settings. Under shape, you're going to see the height of the custom shape. We're going to set that to 0 feet 6 inches. Next, we're going to set the top 4-foot line segment and that side of the shape lower, even with the patio. To do that, I activate my Move tool and I select the midpoint of the 4-foot section. The midpoint is the hollow square in the middle. When you left-click in the midpoint, that section is highlighted independently. Now look over at your custom shape settings, and below shape you're going to see overall height, and then below that, point height as an option. When you turn point height on, you're able to set the point height for any point that is selected. We're going to set our point height to 0 feet, 0 inches. Notice the graphics are changing on that shape. We've got labels that are telling us what the height is set on this side and what the height is set to on this side, making it very clear that this side is lower and this side is higher. Another part of custom shapes is that they can be elevated. It's always a good idea to look at your object settings and make sure that your auto elevation is on. Let's take a look at that in 3D. If you want to see what that looks like without the highlighting, click on the circle with the line through it. Next, we're going to create a fire feature. Over between the 2 columns, we're going to have a fire table with a structural piece on top that kind of looks like a hood. Due to the nature of that shape and the lines of that shape, we're going to draw the table first, just as a normal shape, but the top shape we'll need to rotate in the 3D environment. So this is a great example of one of the unique assets of custom shapes. We can rotate those shapes in 3 different directions. It gives us the option to create architectural detail that might have a unique line, like a curve or an arc, or a diagonal line, like a support for an open roof line. Those shapes have to be drawn as custom shapes. And you need to know how to rotate those shapes in the 3D environment. So we'll use that in our next example. Let's go back into 2D and we'll draw the base or the bottom piece of the fire feature. Zoom in to the existing patio where the columns are And anywhere on this patio, we're going to draw the base of our fire feature, and it's going to be 10 feet by 2 feet. Now what I'd like for you to do is anywhere on this patio, draw that 10 by 2 custom shape. You can use the rectangle tool for that. Anywhere on the patio or anywhere on this grid space, I want you to left click and come to the right 10 feet, down 2 feet, and left click to complete your shape. The height of this fire table is going to be 2 feet 0 inches, so I'll go over to my custom shape and pergola tab and set the height to 2 feet 0 inches. Next, I'm going to have you go down to the bottom of the panel menu. We're looking for our Object Modification tab. In the Object Modification tab, the first button you see is Select Any Object. If that's on, it means that we can select objects from other stages. And that will be necessary because we want to select the columns that we drew in the house stage. We'll need to activate our Move tool to select all 3 shapes. What we're going to do is align the 10 by 2 shape in between the 2 columns. Go to the top of your panel menu and activate your Move tool. When you want to select multiple shapes, you can hold your Control key down. With your Control key held down, select your 10 by 2 shape and then left click on the line of the columns. Now all 3 shapes are selected. Go to your panel menu and scroll down to the bottom of the panel menu. We're looking for the aligning section. It's down at the very bottom. We're going to align all of our shapes to the bottom-most shape. So in the alignment, look for the button that says bottom. Then if you want to distribute these evenly, go to the right, and distribute means spacing them evenly. We're going to distribute them horizontally. Left click on horizontal. You can use that for any shapes. Go ahead and deselect your shape, and we'll look at our shapes in 3D. Everything is aligned, and that's the base for my fire feature. We'll draw the top piece next. Go back into 2D. We're going to draw the top piece in this open area below the patio. We'll need room to work with our custom shape when we go into the 3D environment. We're going to draw this shape in the same orientation that we want to see it once we rotate it upright. If that doesn't make sense, it will once we complete the objective. We're going to activate our line tool and draw the top piece. Now in this open grid space here, anywhere, I'm going to left click and I'm going to come up 3 feet and left click, coming to the right 10 feet, down 3 feet, and those are the outer 3 sides of the shape. We can use the outline tool to create the other side of the shape because it mirrors what we've drawn. Go over to your toolbar, activate your outline tool. Now when you bring your cursor back over, you have the question mark. What shape do you want to mirror? Left click on either one of the yellow squares. When you see the question mark change to an arrow, that's the offset function, and we can bring that in 1 foot and left click to complete our shape. Just remember, we've drawn this in the orientation that we want to see it once we rotate it upright. So I've actually drawn the height of the shape. It's going to be 3 feet in height. So when we look over in our custom shape and pergola settings, what does this height apply to? This applies to the depth of the shape. We're going to set the height value to 2 feet 0 inches. One of the assets that we need to look at is the lip style. We'll set our lip to none, then go down to Object Settings, and we'll set the elevation of the shape. We need this shape to be up where we can rotate it and work with it, so we're going to elevate it 3 feet 6 inches. When you look at Object Settings, if your auto elevation is turned on, that means that the system is putting things at the elevation that they're defaulted to go to. Everything has a defaulted elevation. But if you turn auto elevation off, you can take control of the elevation. We'll set the elevation to 3 feet 6 inches. Now when we go into 3D, we can expect that shape to be floating up 3 feet 6 inches off the ground. Let's go into 3D and take a look. And there's our custom shape. If it was selected in 2D, it already has the gizmo on it. If it wasn't, you'll need to double left click to select it and activate the gizmo. The gizmo can be in move mode, rotate mode, or scale mode. By default, it's in move mode. We want to change it to rotate mode. So when you go to your toolbar, notice the 3 tools at the top that are not grayed out. Those are the 3 functions that you can apply to the gizmo: move, rotate, or scale. We're going to click on rotate, and the arrows on the gizmo are going to change to indicate that we're in rotate mode. You can rotate this shape in 3 different directions. The red arrow rotates it upright. The green arrow also rotates it upright, but it would be on its side. The blue arrow would rotate this horizontally. We want to use the red arrow. When you put your cursor over that red arrow, you can hold down your left mouse button and move your mouse in a counterclockwise orientation. It's going to snap every 45 degrees, and once you've rotated it 90 degrees, it should be vertical. If you're not seeing any movement, make a bigger action. Now that it's rotated upright, we can move it over on top of the base, and we'll have our fire feature complete. It's a little easier to move that and align it in the 2D environment. So we'll go back into 2D and make sure that our Move tool is activated. Go to your toolbar and click on the Move tool. Also notice that the 2D shape is in the same orientation that we rotated it to in 3D. Just left click on the line of the shape and move it on top of the base. You can zoom in and make sure everything is really aligned cleanly and lines up really accurately. That looks great. Now we'll go into 3D and we should have our fire feature complete. If you're working on your own, you can adjust the elevation, but we've set this elevation correctly. When you deselect your shape, you should see a complete fire feature without all the highlighting. And just remember, you can put any material on that. Let's go back into 2D and we'll look at the pergola builder. If you're going to switch to a new type of shape, you want to make sure that none of your current shapes are selected. So left click away from those custom shapes, and then we'll go over and click on pergola in the custom shape and pergola tab. That'll set us up to draw a pergola. The way the pergola builder works is we draw a shape, and the system has a formula to create a standard pergola for that shape or for that size. Then we can go in and make any adjustments or edits that we need to make. We're going to draw a pergola. The dimensions of our pergola are going to be 26 feet by 18 feet. Once we've drawn it, we'll go into 3D, make a few changes. The pergola is going to go over the new patio with the kitchen island, so we're zooming into that area. Now activate your rectangle tool Go to the top right-hand corner of the kitchen island. Left-click there and come to the left 26 feet and then come down 18 feet. When you get those dimensions, left-click to complete your shape. Now look over at your Custom Shape and Pergola tab. We need to set the height of our pergola. We'll set it to 10 feet 0 inches. Now we'll go into 3D and make some edits. So leave it selected in 2D and click on the 3D toggle. I like the look of the pergola, but I'm going to make those posts a little bit bigger. We can adjust certain parts of the pergola in our panel menu by going to our pergola diagram or picture and hovering our cursor over the different parts of the pergola. We've got the slats at the top, then the rafters below that, and then the rafters are supported by the rafter supports, which house the posts. So if you hover your cursor over the different parts of the pergola, it labels those for you. Click on the posts and we'll see the settings for the posts. I'm going to set the thickness of the post to 6 inches. And I'm going to change the spacing of the post as well. That'll be a great way for you to tell how the spacing works. Let's change the spacing from 10 feet 0 inches to 12 feet 9 inches. If you increase the spacing enough, the system will start removing those posts. We don't want to remove any posts. If you decrease the spacing, it will add posts. I want to remove the entire row of posts on the back side, the one close to the house. I don't need the support there because the pergola is attached to a house ledger. We can remove that rafter support and it will remove the rafter support and the posts at the same time and really change this area, really improve it. We want to open that up and remove those posts. If you look under the rafters in the 3D environment, if you look under the rafters and you see the support here, the rafter support, I'm going to double click on it so you can see which one I'm referring to. Double clicking selects that independently. Now I can go up to the trash can at the top of my screen. It's on the right side of the application bar. When you click on the trash can, you'll delete or remove the selected shapes. And that's a big improvement to this area. So that was a really important edit that we needed to make. You can change other aspects of the pergola, like the board profiles. If you want to look at the settings on any parts of the pergola, click on the items in the picture, and you'll see the settings for the slats, the rafters, rafter supports, and posts. I'll deselect my pergola by clicking on the circle with the line through it, and I'm happy with the way that looks. Let's go back into 2D.